First one is authenticity. And I know from talking with interviewers, in my time at American, I've been able to make friends with several interviewers, and they will all tell you they are fatigued at hearing the same catchphrases, same scripts with different things inserted in them.
Most pilots don't understand what career opportunities are available in the world of aviation. They're making career decisions based on advice from friends or posts on internet forums, meaning they are taking huge risks with their livelihood without having all the details. This podcast was created to help you understand the aviation industry so you can find your dream job. Let's get ready for Pushback. Here's your host and my dad, Nick Fialka.
Episode 1, the very first one. I'm Nick Fialka. I'm your host. We're going to go through a lot of different stuff. We're going to talk to lots of cool people. It's going to be a great podcast, and I'm so stoked that you guys are riding along with me. So today we are talking about the 3 things that an interviewer looks for in a candidate. We are talking about the first of those 3 things, which is authenticity. So maybe you have an interview, maybe you're targeting a company for a job, maybe you are new to the aviation world or the airlines, or you're just trying to figure it out. It's confusing. There's so much out there. Well, this is the podcast for you. And this conversation that I have with Bill Sims will be a really great one to help springboard you and keep you moving forward and a great trajectory on your path to success. You're going to see that these episodes, these first 3 that we've put together, they're short, they're simple, they're not complex. But you know what it is? It's the foundational element. It's the Rosetta Stone for what you need to embody and internalize so that you can be successful in this industry. It is so important. And everybody I talk to in all the different airlines, all the different recruiters, everyone I speak with, they always bring up these 3 things. And authenticity is where we are planting our flag today. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Before we get into the interview, there's just a little bit of housekeeping. I would love to chat with you. If you have questions for me, send me an email. If you think I should interview a company or somebody really interesting, send me an email. I'd love to reach out to them. I'd love to interview them and have that conversation. And third, if you yourself would like some free coaching, come on the show, have a conversation about what your path forward in the world of aviation could look like, then do the same thing. Send me an email. My email address is podcast@spitfireelite.com. And don't worry, if you didn't write it down, it's in the show notes. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the interview. All right, everybody, I'm here with our guest, Bill Sims. And Bill is an amazing guy, one of my dear friends that I've known for a really long time. And before I tell you about him, the first thing I want to say is that we are sitting together. The first time I've sat down with somebody face to face for the podcast, which is very fun. He invited me out to his house, and we are in the middle of nowhere. We are in Texas, like there across the street from the house. No lie, there is a cowboy church in Texas. And I drove past horses, and I drove past cattle and barbed wire fences, and we are out here.
You can ride your horse to that church. They encourage it.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing. So let's talk about Bill. He's a husband, he's a father, he's a Marine, he's a jet guy, he's a keynote speaker, a thought leader, a co-founder of the most important thing is Spitfire Elite Consulting. He's a great all-around guy, and if you can't tell, I love him to death. And we're going to have a great time today, and I'd like to welcome Bill and ask you to please give me your story, man. Tell me about yourself.
Oh, geez. No pressure there.
No pressure.
Hey, man, I'm just grateful to have you here. We've been talking about doing this, and no, man, flying at American, I've always had the entrepreneurship bug, so always chasing the small business thing, but did my time in the Marine Corps, flew F-18s there, and transitioned out to American Airlines and loving it. Huge advocate for the industry in general, and just absolutely having a blast. And if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
So you've been at American how long?
Going on 8 years now.
8 years. You're captain?
I am.
What do you fly?
The 737.
Do you like it?
I do love it.
Not as good as the Airbus.
You know, I am jealous of that tray table.
Yeah, I know.
I am. But I'll tell you, I love flying, and the 737 lets me fly it.
I know.
And sometimes it's not a good thing. Yeah. My landings, my passengers will tell you. By just last week, 2 weeks ago, I got a 3-wire comment. I deserved it. I did. But that's the 737 for you. And then sometimes I can really grease it on, but not every day is the same.
Okay, so 8 years ago, what was hiring like back then?
There was no hiring for years and years. And the last airline to hire was Delta in 2010. So fortunately, I was on active duty buying my time. And then everybody was just waiting. Hey, the floodgates are about to open. Everyone's about to hire. And then towards the end of 2013, United started it. And then right at the end of 2013, Delta, Southwest, and then shortly thereafter, American, all just, boom, they're starting to hire. And so it's just thousands of pilots literally queued up with applications. I mean, we don't have guard bums, but we had reserve bums in my squadron that, fortunately, wives at home that were taking, paying the bills while they were just doing reserve flights from time to time and biding their time till they could get on with whichever airline.
Did you apply only to American, or were you applying to other places?
No, I applied just about everywhere. And FedEx wasn't hiring at the time, but I applied and interviewed at Delta, Southwest, and then American.
Why did you choose American back then?
Many reasons. So I would have told you then, and I'll tell you now, that if you just compare the companies, I think Delta's clearly the winner in terms of more financially sound and stuff like that. But my wife and I, we had a plan to move to whatever domicile. All my mentors, by the way, all told me do not commute. And no offense to commuters, have to each their own. But all my mentors told me don't commute if you can help it. And the funny part is all my mentors were commuters. So I actually took that to heart. I like my family. I like to think they like me. So if I can maximize my time with them, which the Marine Corps, I love the Marine Corps, but the Marine Corps was not about maximizing your time with family. So this was my time to give back to serve my family. And so I had a plan for every airline. I picked a domicile, and that was my plan. If it was Southwest, it was Phoenix. If it was Delta, it was Atlanta. And so I got hired on my birthday at Delta.
Oh, man.
I was like, this is going to be the best birthday ever or the worst birthday ever, because Delta was my dream, and that was where I wanted to be. I got hired on my birthday, and there was an 8-month wait for class dates. Ooh. Because of there was a flow-through thing they were dealing with. They just started hiring. So, hey, no problem. I could buy my time, that was no problem at all. Well, American called with an interview. To tell you the truth, I had a CJO from Southwest and Delta, but in Meridian, Mississippi, there's 50 guys trying to get hired. And I thought, I'm the first guy to get an invite from American in their new hiring process. Everything's new at American. They haven't hired in 10, 12 years. I thought, I'm going to go interview. I kind of like it. I know that some people hate it. I like it. I really enjoy it. So I'm going to go interview, and I'm going to take all the gouge I can back and share it with my squadron, and so they can be prepared. That was my only reason for interviewing an American. I had no desire, no intention of going there. And here we are.
Was this back in the day when, was there an internet application, or was it like you had to mail it in? You had to put a 70. You remember that?
Do I look that old?
Well,
do I look that old?
I
mean, I got a few gray hairs here, but no.
For those of you that aren't tracking, you had to put a $75 check just for the privilege of having them read your app, and then you just mailed it off, right?
Yes. No, I was airline apps, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I wish I'd invented airline apps. God. Think about American hadn't hired for 10 years, right?
Correct.
Think about being the last guy on that seniority list.
Yeah.
For 10 years.
Yes.
I've been at my airline 8 months. I'm 85% in the Airbus in domicile. I got 2,500 people at the company below me already. It's nuts.
Yeah.
Gosh. All right. So I digress a little bit. So we are here to actually talk about the 3 things that airlines are looking for in a pilot, right? The 3 things. But before we go in there, I want to talk about Spitfire, okay? So as you guys know, this podcast, we're brought to you by Spitfire. We are Spitfire Elite Interview Consulting, and we are the biggest movement in airline hiring there is. And so our job is to make your interview feel like a walk in the park. You put forth the effort, we'll give you the things you need to make it happen. So can you just tell us, Bill, I didn't say it earlier, he's the co-founder of Spitfire, and I'd like you to just walk me through, why are we doing this podcast? Like, how did we get here?
You know, it's been a heck of a journey here in just this short 15 months that we've been doing this. But the truth is, the credit goes to Tron. I mean, he came to me and very emphatically, passionately was like, we got to change.
You guys were squadron mates, right?
We were.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was my instructor. We've flown around the world together. He did my aircraft commander upgrades. I transitioned over to the Navy Reserve, flew the C-40.
So he's always been your boss.
He's always been,
got it. Just checking.
Always been my boss. Checking. Yeah, and we got to be really good friends through this process of flying together and stuff. But here's the thing: I've been a big fan of helping people with interviews for years. I did it as a consultant for years. I do it for friends, do it for squadron mates. Well, Tron's done the same thing. He did it as a volunteer at OBAP, helping people get ready for FedEx. And so when the two of us were drilling on the same day in the squadron, it was not uncommon when one of our squadron mates was interviewing at, you name it, Airline, that we would go and grab a whiteboard, make sure the CO's not looking, and we would start drilling these guys or gals, whoever's interviewing, and we'd give them the business. And I tell you, Tron and I together, with his experience in mind, we could really make them sweat, and we could really put our squadron mates through the ringer. And so it's just something we enjoyed doing. And once we found out someone had an airline, it wasn't a choice. It was, hey, it's Bill and Tron time. Like, come on, like, we're going to go do this. And I would kill them with tell me about a time questions. Tron was always the master of the CRM style interview, that they do at FedEx and Southwest, the SBI type stuff. So
and Frontier.
And Frontier, you're right.
That's
you're
right.
Yeah. So that process, he had a methodology that was better than anything I'd ever seen. Even in my consulting previously, it was better than anything I've ever seen. So he would bring that, and we'd whiteboard it out, and we really felt like we prepared people really, really well.
Yeah, gosh. And it's also great. Like, seriously, you guys live like 10 minutes from each other, maybe 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's so fun, especially in this day and age, especially like for those of you that are not in the military and not in the reserves, the people in the squadrons that are flying in the reserves, they come from all over, like all over.
Yep.
It could, the guy living in Alaska, there's a guy in Thailand. You remember?
Yep.
There's a guy in Thailand, for crying out loud, like people everywhere. And they just come into the squadron and do their flying and do their thing. And we'll do a podcast on, for those of you interested in figuring out how to fly in the military, and you may have some interest in that, especially not full-time or full-time, we'll go through it. We'll dive down. But that's for a later date. Man, that's so cool. So you're going to walk us through, we were talking about kind of those three things.
Sure.
And I'm really excited about this because this is the baseline, right? All these companies are hiring. Every single airline's hiring. They're dying. And the poor regionals, they can't keep butts in seats. And that's why the guys at the American Airlines wholly owned, they're getting triple pay at $1,000,000,000 an hour to make it happen, is because of the exodus that's happening to the majors. And rightly so, because it's been a long time coming and people have had a lot of hard careers going through it and stuff like that. But I mean, the big threat, right, is not maintaining your culture. If you have to hire 2,000 people in a year and you've got, 30 minutes to talk to that person that you're going to hire for 30, 35, 40 years, you've got to wrap it up. So they're looking at specific stuff. So I'm going to Bill is going to kind of talk to us about the things he's seen with the hiring and what these companies are looking for. So why don't you start us off with number one?
Yeah, no, it's funny. The three most important things, we actually built a company around these three concepts, core values, if you will. And the first one is authenticity. And I know from talking with interviewers, at my time at American, I've been able to make friends with several interviewers, and they will all tell you they are fatigued at hearing the same answer.
The same stuff.
The same catchphrases.
Yep.
The same scripts with different things inserted in them. So it was very easy to go, okay, what does authenticity look like? Like, how do you teach someone to prepare for an interview without just saying, go be yourself? Because that's sometimes not good advice.
Yeah, especially for me.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, for me too. Like, I think I interview pretty well, but I also know there's a version of me that will not get hired.
Yeah, that version of me wears a flight suit for sure.
There's a few stories, experiences I've had, that maybe don't score points in an interview. And so how do you navigate that and also be authentic? Because here's the bottom line. Airlines will tell you over and over until you're blue in the face that they want to get to know you. So we basically took that word authenticity and we're like, all right, how do we teach that? And, one of my favorite things, and Nick, I've seen you do this so well, but, I'll ask someone a question in a webinar and they'll give me kind of a generic, vague answer. Well, I'm professional, I work hard. And I'll go, okay, well, you started with professional. And one of my favorite things to do is just be like, okay, is just dig. Why do you say professional? Tell me, or why do you, in fact, I want everyone to not use professional because it's been overused, find something different. But, I have a strong work ethic, also overused, but let's not use that word, but let's dig in. Why do you think that is? And then when you start digging into the details and I'm like, all right, tell me more. And then I get into the specific details. And by the time that we're done, we have this conversation, we call it just coffee shop, coffee shop mentality. That's what your interview is. So I want you to be like you're in a coffee shop with that interviewer and just, if I asked you in a coffee shop, like, tell me about your career, what you've done, it would sound different than what some people are teaching you to prepare for an interview. And that's really what airlines want. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah. So last night I had a PIC and precision interview coaching. So that's our webinar where it's live and we've got a bunch of people in the room and we're going through questions. And we talked about leadership and we talked about the why United, why American, why Delta. And the thing I drove home to them, because a lot of people, like, we talk about getting to know the company that you're going to work for and that you desire to work for. And as I went through a couple of them and they were just not good and they just weren't.
Right.
And because they were, just like you said, they were reading the web page from, like, you clicked on American Airlines and it brought up their core values and it's like they read them aloud. And I said, everybody, we're going to go through the entire top to bottom, everybody in here. I want you to give me 2 small scenarios that are only yours, like that nobody else can ever touch. And it was like the first couple were a big struggle. And then there was a guy in there from Iraq. He was from Baghdad. And he was 9 years old when he immigrated to the US.
Wow.
And it was amazing. And he talked about his flight into JFK, immigrating to the US. And he flew it. He wanted to go to Delta Airlines. He flew a Delta Jet, flight 26. He still remembered the flight number. And he didn't speak English. But his father was one of the vice presidents of Iraqi Airways. And so he went to the front of the cockpit, had a conversation with the pilots, and the whole story was like, wasn't a dry eye in the room. It was beautiful. And it was like his, and nobody else has that.
Yep.
And that, like, full honesty, when I was doing interview prep, I did Spitfire and I did another company. And I did the other company for about a week. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is awful. Because when we rolled into finding, like, challenging people to find that, like, because that's what they want, right? They want vulnerability. Mm-hmm. A little bit, like, I don't want you crying in a pile, but, like, they want that realness. They want, just like you and I talk, and when we're sitting on the back porch having a beer and smoking a cigar, like, what's real to you? And if that is who you are, it's going to translate, right? I don't know. I love it. All right. Anything else about authenticity?
No, I think you hit on the key points there. It's just, I don't like saying just go in and be yourself. And I don't want people to take away from this. Like, just, you got to understand how to score points. But you can score points while being yourself.
Yeah.
That's what you need to prepare for. But there's a lot of things that are just straight up overused.
Yeah. And, this is where the homework lies, right? Because it's about reflection. Mm-hmm. It's about introspection. It's about being vulnerable, like we said. If you're married, like, thinking about, the way I tell them is, like, you're on your first date. Like, you have a 30-minute date with your future spouse that you're going to be married to for the rest of your career. And you have one chance to prove it. And that's it. You either prove it or you don't. And if you're not yourself, neither of you are going to like what you get into. So that's it. And it takes a lot of time to get to that point where you have that self-awareness, I think.
I think you're right. I think sometimes that thought of only having 30 minutes to prove yourself induces so much pressure, and then people perform at a level that they're just like, why did I do that? You know, really, so what we can do is just go, hey, here's how you put points on the board, but just at the end of the day, you're in a coffee shop.
Yeah. It's funny when you first try it and you're awful at it.
Yeah.
Because you're an aviator. You're good at everything.
Yep.
You're good looking, you're tall, you're fit. You can fly a fast machine. You can do calculations in your head. You can do all those things, but then you have to speak.
Yep. And even for people who speak well, by the way, I'll tell you, I've always been confident in my ability to speak or speak in front of a crowd or any of that stuff. I did it every day before every flight that I was in charge of. But that doesn't necessarily translate to a good interviewer. And then so every once in a while I'll come across, in fact, my neighbor who's literally 2 doors down, he's a retired vice president, and he had an interview with Atlas. He's accumulated some time, enough time to have an ATP. Great story. I won't bore you with it now. But
love it.
No, we called you. Remember? Do you remember the
oh my gosh.
We called you for advice about what he was doing. But long story short is
it all comes around.
The way that this whole thing started was he was a retiring vice president, and he said, and I mentioned to him, well, you're ready for he was worried about the technical stuff as not being a professional pilot. I'm like, well, what about the HR questions? Like, oh, I got nothing to worry about there. I mean, literally.
If I had $1.
And every time I hear that, that's when I go, there's a problem there.
Yeah.
And that's someone who's confident in his ability to present, not necessarily interview. So I immediately went like, okay, well, sit down. Right in front of his wife, I go, tell me about a time you worked with someone you didn't like. And right away, he told me about this person that he really did not like.
Yep. Oh, my gosh.
And I just went, you just scored a 2 out of 5.
Yeah.
Like, you're starting off bad. Let me tell you why. And then it was so funny. He had no idea I owned an interview prep company. He just called me over there because his neighbor flew for American. And could help.
No kidding.
So I said, here's what you're doing for the next 2 days till your interview.
It was 2 days?
2 days.
2 days.
He had 48 hours.
Did he get the job?
Got hired.
Oh, my God.
He sure did. And you gave him some great advice, too. We called you on speakerphone. And, hey, this guy was trying to decide between 2 airlines, a regional and Atlas. And, man, it was oh, my gosh. He got hired. Yeah, he got hired. But he just needed to know what right looked like. So still a great guy and still a guy that I think anybody would want to fly with. But you don't score points when you tell that story about,
Yeah, and I want you to take it this is not a sales pitch for us. This is not a sales pitch for Spitfire. I see this all the time. I was sitting in the aircraft, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago, and a guy popped his head in the door. He flew for a low-cost carrier, and he was asking, he's like, hey, do you mind if I fly with you? I'm going here. And we said, yeah, no sweat. And he said, oh, I have a positive space ticket, which was kind of unusual because guys with positive space never stick their head in the cockpit. And the guy said, hey, what is your company looking for in a pilot? I was like, and the guy I was flying with knew I did interview prep and stuff. And I said, well, a lot of things, man. And we just kind of started this general conversation. And he says, well, I have an interview in the morning with your company. And I said, oh, no. And I mean, it was hard because he had not done any preparation. He had not done any, had a hard time explaining himself. And it was hard to listen to. And I was like, I land at 8 p.m. I need you to call me after I land. Here's my phone number. I printed out some ACARS paper, wrote my phone number on it. And I was like, listen, I'm going to just give you everything I possibly can because I felt so bad for this guy because he was walking into the lion's den and not knowing that he was going in there. I wish I had more time with him. And sadly, it didn't work out for him. And it's a bummer, but everybody that's coming through, I want everybody to get a sweet job because it's a great place to be, isn't it?
Sure, absolutely.
God, it's so good. Hey, before I let you go, I need to mention one thing because a lot of people are asking me, can you do anything? Can you help me with this? And the answer is yes. At Spitfire Elite, we will make more millionaires this year than Major League Baseball will make in the next 5 years. Our company actually does this. It's called Spitfire Elite Interview Consulting. And you can find us over at SpitfireElite.com. Our clients, they call us the easy button for interview prep because everything you need to crush your interview is there in one spot. Whether it's application review or interview prep, all of it is covered. We've helped thousands of clients who are now flying at their dream jobs because our coaches gave them the one-on-one feedback that they needed to succeed on the biggest day of their life. The best part of Spitfire is our community. All Spitfire clients will get access to our private chats where they can work with each other and they can work with our coaches and get the latest information on all the airlines. If you'd like to make sure that you are 100% ready to go on your big day, there is only one choice. Everything you need is in one place, and I think it's pretty affordable. You'll have to take a look for yourself. Just go over to SpitfireElite.com and check us out. Use the coupon code PODCAST and it'll save you 10%. And by the way, I will see you on the next episode. The statements made on this show are my own opinions and do not reflect, nor are they under any direction from my employer.